On a quiet March evening in 2018, 20-year-old Joseph Williams-Torres was doing what countless young people do, sitting in a parked van with a friend in Waltham Forest, East London, simply listening to music and talking. He was a popular local man with no criminal record and no ties to the chaotic gang violence that was beginning to swallow his neighborhood. But in the brutal, indiscriminate war that had taken over the borough, none of that mattered. As darkness settled over the residential street, a group of hooded figures emerged from the shadows. They moved with a chilling purpose, surrounding the vehicle. Before Joseph or his friend could react, a gun was drawn, and Joseph's life was ended in a hail of gunfire. He was shot in the chest and legs, a tragic victim of mistaken identity in a war he had no part in. His death was a devastating miscalculation, an innocent life caught in the crossfire of a feud that had turned the streets of Waltham Forest into a war zone. But this single, senseless act of violence wasn't the beginning, and it certainly wasn't the end. It was an escalation point in a conflict that kicked off when a powerful, established gang splintered, creating a bitter and violent rivalry over territory and drug money. This is the story of the Molly Boys, and how their ruthless ambition and bloody feuds spiraled into a devastating cycle of revenge that claimed the lives of children and innocent bystanders alike. What makes a group of young men turn their own neighborhoods into a battlefield? Let us know your initial thoughts in the comments, and keep watching to understand the full, shocking story. Also, remember to smash the subscribe button. Let's dive deeper. The origins of a feud. So, where and how did this all begin? To understand the violence of 2018, we have to go back to 2015 in the East London postcodes of E10 and E17. For years, the dominant force in the Waltham Forest area had been the Beaumont Crew, also known as LGR, or the Let's Get Rich Crew. They were the old guard, but a new, younger, and far more ruthless group was emerging, and they were ready to seize control. They called themselves the Molly Boys. While some sources claim the Molly Boys splintered directly from the Beaumont Crew, others suggest they were an entirely new force that rose to challenge the established order. The name Molly was a reference to the Somali heritage of many of the gang's founding members, but in reality, the group was ethnically diverse. They shared one clear focus: business. A report commissioned by the Waltham Forest Council would later describe them as the most business-driven, violent, and ruthless street gang in the entire area, a group less interested in postcode pride and more focused on profit. The Molly Boys operated with a chilling corporate efficiency. They deliberately kept a low profile, avoiding the flashy social media posts that other gangs used to build notoriety, because that kind of visibility was bad for business and attracted police attention. Their core operation was drug trafficking, specifically through the now infamous county lines model. This wasn't just selling drugs on their own turf. It was an expansionist enterprise. They groomed and exploited vulnerable children, some as young as 12 or 13, to act as couriers, moving Class A drugs from their London hub out to coastal towns and rural areas like Essex, where the market was untapped and the profits high. These children were controlled through intimidation, coercion, and violence. At its peak, this sophisticated network was reportedly generating as much as £50,000 a week. This kind of aggressive, corporate-style expansion was bound to create conflict. The Old Guard, the Beaumont Crew, and other local gangs were suddenly faced with direct, violent competition. But the most explosive rivalry wasn't with LGR. It was with another local crew, based around the Priory Court and Hyam Hill estates, who refused to bow down to the Molly Boys' growing dominance. The streets of Walthamstow became a tinderbox, saturated with tension and just waiting for a single spark to set it all ablaze. This shift from postcode wars to profit-driven drug enterprises has changed the face of gang violence in the UK. If you're finding this breakdown insightful, hit the like button to help us reach a wider audience. The spark, a killing on the high street. That spark came on the evening of May 7th, 2017. 17-year-old Elijah Dornelly was walking on Walthamstow High Street with a friend when he was ambushed by two rivals from the Priory Court / Hyam Hill gang. The attackers, Ezra Abika Soares and Morgan Mockford, had ventured way off patch to sell drugs and had lain in wait, armed with knives. As Elijah passed, they pounced. He managed to dodge the first swing, but was then stabbed with brutal force in the stomach. Grievously wounded, with his intestines spilling from the wound, he managed to stumble into a nearby Arabian Nights cafe before collapsing. Despite the efforts of medics, he died in the hospital 2 hours later. Elijah was a known friend and associate of the Molly Boys. In what can only be described as a gut-wrenching irony, he had attended an anti-knife crime rally just hours before he himself was killed by a blade. His mother described him as a good and helpful boy who loved football and hoped to become a PE teacher. His death wasn't just another headline in a city grappling with a knife crime epidemic. For the Molly Boys, it was a profound insult and a declaration of war. Police would later state that Elijah's murder was the definitive catalyst for an increasingly bloodied and vengeful feud between the Molly Boys and the Priory Court / Hyam Hill gang. For Elijah's friends and the Molly Boys, any grief they felt was quickly scorched by a burning rage. An immediate vendetta was sworn against their rivals. The streets had been set on fire, and a cycle of revenge was now in motion, though it spiraled completely and tragically out of control. The fact that Elijah attended an anti-knife crime rally on the day of his death is a heartbreaking detail. Do you think community initiatives like this can make a difference? Or is the problem too deep-rooted? Share your thoughts below. A cycle of bloody revenge. Leading the charge for vengeance was a rising and particularly ruthless figure within the Molly Boys named Hamza Ul Haq. He was a close friend of Elijah Dornelly, and he took his friend's death personally. The feud escalated fast. The violence became a series of tit-for-tat attacks, each one more brazen than the last. In November 2017, Ul Haq himself became a target. While in a pizza restaurant, rivals stormed in and squirted acid at him and his associates. He survived the attack, but it only seemed to harden his resolve and intensify his thirst for retribution. He was recorded vowing revenge. Just 2 days later, on November 16, 2017, Ul Haq made his move. He organized and led a group of around 10 attackers, armed with a terrifying array of knives, swords, and machetes, as they went hunting for their next target. They cornered 18-year-old Kacem Mokrane on Mount Pleasant Road, believing he was tied to the Priory Court gang. Before the attack, Kacem had been at home, had pizza, and told his mother he loved her. Within moments, he was ambushed. The attack was frenzied and merciless, lasting only about 25 seconds. Kacem was stabbed at least twice and suffered horrific injuries, including an eviscerated bowel. His attackers fled, leaving him for dead. He was rushed to the hospital, where he clung to life for 4 days before dying from his injuries, which included multi-organ failure. Immediately after orchestrating the murder, Hamza Ul Haq fled the country, hiding out in Pakistan for 4 months, hoping to escape the inevitable police investigation. But his absence did nothing to cool the simmering tensions back in London. The fire he had helped unleash had taken on a life of its own. The violence was becoming more reckless, more sloppy, and it was about to lead to one of the feud's most tragic and unforgivable mistakes. The use of acid as a weapon and the sheer brutality of these revenge attacks are shocking. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications, because the consequences of this escalating war are about to become even more devastating. The war spills over innocent victims. On March 14, 2018, just 5 days after Hamza Ul Haq returned to the UK for Pakistan, he was back on the streets, leading another revenge mission. He and 2 accomplices were out hunting for a member of the Priory Court gang. Cruising through a residential area in Waltham Forest, they spotted a young man sitting in a parked van who they believed was their target. The resemblance was apparently so close that prosecutors would later describe it as uncanny, right down to the beanie hat he was wearing. The hooded attackers swarmed the van and tried to pull the door open. Inside was 20-year-old Joseph Williams-Torres. A struggle ensued before one of the attackers drew a gun and fired, shooting Joseph in the chest and legs. He was not in a gang. He wasn't a criminal. He was an innocent man, a popular local boy with a loving family, who was murdered simply because he looked like someone else. His father later spoke of the immense pain of not only losing his son, but also having to defend his name against the cruel and incorrect assumption that he must have been involved in crime. The Molly Boys campaign of violence wasn't limited to the Priory Court crew. Their original feud with the older Beaumont Crew was still simmering, and it exploded into the national headlines on the night of January 8, 2019. That evening, 14-year-old Jaden Moodie was riding a moped in Leighton. Jaden was tragically caught between worlds. His family said he was a loving boy who gave gloves to the homeless in winter, but he had also been exploited by gangs from a young age. Associated with the Beaumont Crew, he was allegedly dealing drugs that night. A stolen Mercedes carrying 5 members of the Molly Boys spotted him, and in a calculated act of vehicular violence, they rammed him off the road. As he lay helpless and injured on the ground, a group jumped out of the car. In just 7 seconds, they stabbed him 9 times. The sheer brutality of the attack and Jaden's shockingly young age sent a wave of horror and revulsion across the entire country. The random, mistaken identity shooting of Joseph Williams-Torres and the savage murder of a 14-year-old boy demonstrated just how far the conflict had spiraled. The streets of East London had become an urban war zone where anyone could be a target, whether they were a rival gang member or just an innocent person in the wrong place at the wrong time. The deaths of Joseph and Jaden show the devastating ripple effects of gang violence. Which story affects you more and why? Let us know in the comments, and please consider sharing this video to raise awareness about the human cost of these feuds. The police close in. The high profile and brutal nature of the murders, especially that of 14-year-old Jaden Moodie, put immense pressure on the Metropolitan Police to bring the perpetrators to justice. A dedicated investigation, codenamed Operation Sizen, was already focused on the escalating gang violence in Waltham Forest, but the killings of Joseph Williams-Torres and Jaden Moodie became its absolute top priorities. The investigation was described as particularly complex, involving multiple suspects, numerous crime scenes, and links between different violent incidents. Slowly but surely, detectives began to piece the cases together. In the Jaden Moodie case, CCTV footage and forensic evidence were crucial. One of the attackers, 19-year-old Ayub Majdalan, was identified after his DNA was found on a bloody rubber glove and a discarded knife. In December 2019, he was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 21 years. The other 4 attackers involved in Jaden's death have never been identified or brought to justice. For the murders of Kacem Mokrane and Joseph Williams-Torres, the investigation zeroed in on the ringleader, Hamza Ul Haq. In 2020, Ul Haq was convicted for the mistaken identity murder of Joseph Williams-Torres and sentenced to life with a minimum of 28 years. Then, in a separate, complex trial that concluded in 2023, he was also convicted for masterminding the revenge murder of Kacem Mokrane. For his central role in 2 revenge killings, the judge handed Ul Haq a new, combined minimum sentence of 36 years. His accomplices in the Mokrane murder, Abdirasak Ali, Luca Griffiths, and Kamil Kazmierski, were also jailed for life. A 5th man, Christopher Wilson, was finally convicted in a retrial in late 2024 and sentenced in early 2025 to a minimum of 16 years, bringing a final measure of justice for Kacem's family after a grueling 7-year wait. The police didn't just target the killers, they also went after the gang's financial engine. In November 2021, a major breakthrough saw 5 key members of the Molly Boys convicted and jailed for running the lucrative County Lines operation into Essex, a critical blow that cut off a major source of the gang's power and profit. It's clear that police work was essential, but what else do you think is needed to dismantle a gang as organized as the Molly Boys? Press the subscribe button if you want more deep dives into major police operations, legacy, and aftermath. The convictions of key players like Hamza Ul Haq and Ayub Majdalan dealt a significant blow to the Molly Boys' operational command and brought a painful, partial justice for the victims' families. The intense wave of violence that peaked between 2017 and 2019 has largely subsided, But the scars in the community of Waltham Forest run deep and are not easily healed. For several years, these feuds turned chicken shops, residential streets, and quiet alleyways into flashpoints of extreme violence, leaving behind a pervasive legacy of fear, trauma, and grief. Murals for the slain teenagers became a common and heartbreaking sight across the borough, a constant, painful reminder of the young lives that were cut short by the senseless violence. The story of the Molly Boys serves as a textbook example of the evolution of modern, business-like gangs, where traditional postcode loyalties are replaced by a ruthless pursuit of profit enforced through extreme violence and the systematic exploitation of children. The interconnected rivalries with the Priory Court crew and the Beaumont Crew left a trail of destruction that ruined dozens of lives on all sides: victims, perpetrators, and their families. While many of the ringleaders are now behind bars, serving lengthy sentences, the deep-rooted social issues that push these young men toward violence, poverty, a lack of opportunity, social deprivation, and the powerful pull of a criminal life, remain very real challenges in Waltham Forest and areas like it across the country. The war for control of the streets may have quieted down, but for the families of Joseph Williams-Torres, Jaden Moodie, Elijah Dornelly, and Kacem Mokrane, the loss is permanent. Their names stand as a tragic and enduring legacy of a feud that burned so brightly and cost so very much. The cycle of violence seems to have been broken for now, but the underlying problems persist. What is the most important step a community can take to prevent the next generation from following the same path? Share this video and start a conversation. The cycle of violence between these East London gangs shines a harsh light on a complex and devastating reality on Britain's streets. It's a story of how a dispute over drug money can escalate into a full-blown war that consumes everyone and everything it touches. The key figures who drove this conflict are now serving life sentences, their youth and freedom traded for a bitter legacy of violence and grief. The community in East London is quieter now, but the fundamental question of how to stop the next generation from walking down the same dark path remains tragically unanswered. For more deep dives into the UK's criminal underworld and the forces that shape it, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thank you for watching.